There is much that our culture has forgotten about how to be in the world, how to live with the world, our place in it. Important human things that we no longer understand. And who am I to speak to those things? You know, I'm just a guy who undoubtedly will know a lot more than I do now when it's my time to die. But I understand more than I used to, and hopefully it's enough to be of some value to others. There are no shortage of sacred texts that have important messages for us. I found in my life that a lot of those texts speak to me at times, and then at others are stumbling blocks as my mind clings too steadfastly to a message that was delivered to a different people in a different time, a different culture. You know, there are good people who will take those words and regard them as heresy, and that's fine. I stand ready to be judged by my Creator on the purity of my heart, the purity of my words, and the purity of my actions. I have failed that judgment many times in my life, and no doubt will fail again, hopefully less often as time goes on. But at the end of the day, I have the same human frailties that every one of us does, perhaps more. So what prompted this, I was talking with a good friend. You know, he's really a great man. He's, I think, 20 years ahead of me in chronological time, and you know, perhaps twice where I am in life experience. But he was talking about dreams and the what happens when a dream dies, and I realized that, you know, there's a way that I've always proceeded regarding dreams, that we don't have a proper way of understanding in our culture. We don't understand how to have a proper dreaming, so that's you know, that's what I'm talking about here. Throughout my life, and you know, I've gone back and forth on this. You know, the way in our culture we form goals. Here's my goal. Here's what I'm going to do. And typically these are all external things. You know, I'm going to have this kind of job. I'm going to live like this. I'm going to have this many horses in my string. You know, if you want to step back a couple hundred years and go out onto the Great Plains. But for the most part, what I've tried to do that has felt very right to me is to be guided by a dreaming, a vision of who I am to be. And this is an internal sense. It's a sense without a form. It's a sense without externalities of, here is the strength of my spirit, here is the shape of my spirit, here's how I will stand in relation to others. And you know, those are the visions, the successive dreamings that I've attempted to live into throughout my life. And what I've found is the externalities often surprise me. You know, I may in my head think that, you know, this vision, this dreaming of who I will be fits with this set of externalities. And that's almost never the case. You know, if I'm following my dreaming, I wind up in places that I never would have imagined, you know, as far as externalities are concerned. And, you know, the way to have these dreamings is to listen. You have to find your center. And, you know, I've talked elsewhere about connectedness, but you have to find that place and that way to be connected, to be at your center. And when you turn your mind off, and oftentimes this is something that will happen to me in an afternoon nap, your mind is off and you go into that state, and you know, if you're deeply centered at that time, you may have a vision of who that next iteration of you is to be. And then, you know, that there's that vision, and then there's a set of values that you can mentally hold on to, that say, I will proceed in this way regardless of what the externality is. And you know, those two things have grown me beyond anything that I ever would have imagined or could have set out for myself in terms of an external dream. And you know, that's back asswards from the way that we think about it in our society. You know, that's not a recipe for success as we define it, but you know, I found it to be a recipe for a very centered and powerful life that has led me into truly remarkable places. You know, and then there are, you know, at times I've had visions of externalities, just because, you know, the firmament here is not as strong as we'd like to think it is, and you know, sometimes the veil is pierced and you look through to another time and place, and those are kind of neat. I've probably had 5 or 6 of them throughout my life. You know, the one that's still ahead of me hasn't come to pass is I've had for a long time. I mean, other visions have come to pass since, you know, since I first had this one, and you know, I think I may understand the shape of it now, but you know, what I've found is that, as with all externalities, I've often been surprised where, you know, I'll live through the moment that I've seen in the past, and it'll be the opposite of the way I thought it would be. I'll realize that I didn't understand at all what the vision meant, even though I had it. So I'm always careful about those, but those have been interesting checkpoints that say, yes, you're on the path, you're proceeding through your life. And you know, not everybody necessarily is going to have those, but I do believe that important dreaming, that conversation between you and your creator, you and the universe, you and the world around you, when you're centered and deeply connected, that agreement about who you're going to live into, the place that your spirit is going to grow into, that's something that I believe everybody is capable of if they look for it. And you know, maybe that doesn't have the ring of truth or the ring of importance to you, which is fine. You know, ultimately you're in the hands of your creator regardless, but I would encourage you to step back and evaluate your life not on the basis of externalities, but on the basis of what your dream, what your vision of who it is that you're going to become, and how you're going to hold yourself in relation to the rest of the world, how that's going to look, and then let the magic happen that comes from that as the externalities find you that are greater than anything you really could have set forth in your mind.